Should we start talking about The Sopranos, Series 3 and Series 4?
Yeah, we can skip all the... I think Tony is actually. He's a bad guy, but I like him. Yeah, Season 3. It's your favourite season of the show?
Yeah, it is. I think that Series 2 and Series 3 so far have been peak The Sopranos for me. Because, for me, the first series started off exceptionally well, and it was everything that I really wanted from the show. It had a couple of really great standalone episodes. It had really interesting characters. It had a complete plethora of really great performances. But the last few episodes let it down, where it kind of felt like it was going to rush things a little bit. The second series was so much better because it had that consistent pacing that I really liked, while still having those really, really fantastic plot lines all the way throughout the series that really pay off towards the end. A couple of great episodes towards the finale of the season, as well as Puss's death, which was one of the saddest so far in the show, maybe even still the saddest for me. The Series 3 for me was so perfect because it had the consistent pacing that I love from Series 2, whereas it still had those really, very series-defining moments. It had some fantastic episodes, similar to College from the first series, where they were kind of very self-contained stories. You have Pine Barrens towards the end of the end of the season. You've got a very important character death, which they planted the seeds of very early on in the series, and there's a character that I really liked. And then they also introduced another character who really is, to me, what I think about when it comes to Series 3. You have a fantastic episode where he does, I guess, our quote-unquote the worst thing that someone's done in a TV show, right? Ralph Cifaretto. Yeah. So really, it just combined all of the things that I loved about the first and the second series and put them in one series, and it was just really, really, really great. So I was so happy. I mean, it kind of shows that I was really getting into the third series because I was at my grandparents' at the time when I started it, and my dad was up there with me, and we watched the first few together. And then when he went back down to Maidenhead, I was up by myself for another week, and I just absolutely stormed through the third series. I was watching about 3 or 4 episodes a day. It was ridiculous, and before I knew it, I just finished that season because I was so into it. Whereas I think with the fourth series, I was happy to watch an episode a day, but I never felt compelled to watch more than one a day. Whereas I really had that with the third series. I was just enjoying every moment of it. And part of that was to do with the fact that, well, kind of talking to someone who's already watched the show, you kind of talking to me about moments and kind of alluding to things that I really, really wanted to see, like the Ralph Sympathy episode, which is in Series 4, admittedly. But what I really, really wanted to see was the Pine Barrens episode, which I'd heard so much about. We got that nerd writer. Yeah. And there was also the horrible episode where he really, really does something terrible, Ralph. And so those were moments that I was really, really looking forward to watching, and they fucking paid off in really, really great ways. So I was really happy with the third series, you know?
Yeah, I mean, in our first episode, I think we talked about series... We touched upon a few Series 3 things. Just going from the top, I think the most impressive thing about Series 3, which I'd say is maybe my second or third favourite, I think it's Series 2, 3, and 4 are the best the show is. Although I do think the last part of Series 6 is very good as well. I guess the thing that's holding it back is there's those 2 episodes, which you could say are among the 2 best of the seasons, if not. But I'm sure we'll talk about those, and I guess why they don't work as well for me.
There's also other episodes I really want to talk about, especially the first episode of the third series, which somehow makes the FBI subplot actually interesting. There's also the episode where it's very focused on Jen, right, quite early on.
Should we start with the first episode? Because I think with the first 2, we've probably got a lot to say. If you want to talk about the first one.
Yeah, we do. I think the first episode really surprised me, because very early on I realised quite quickly what they were going for, which was an episode that showed what the FBI were up to, and how they were working on trying to get to Tony and the organisation. And what I really liked about it was that I expected that I wouldn't like it, and I did, because I guess the first episode back after the second series is amazing conclusion with not only Richie's death, but also Sal's death, and I kind of wanted to see how things what the aftermath of that was. But to take an episode right out of the bat and devote it just to the FBI was, I thought, very, very ballsy, and I think it really, really paid off, because it's an extremely tense episode. The premise of it is they're trying to plant a lamp that has a mic in Tony's basement, and they have to find a day where everyone's out of the house. So you've got the maid, and then of course you've got the main family. So AJ, Meadow, Khan, and Tony. And watching the FBI go about trying to do this kind of sting operation is it's just so entertaining. Because you have the day where they try and do it, but it all goes to shit because I think the maid comes back and then the whole floor's flooded or something like that, right? So they have to wait for the basement. Sorry, not the floor. The basement.
Because they see it's gonna flood when they check it out.
That's another, because they check the boiler, don't they? And they can see that it's completely fucked. And then I think the funniest thing about that episode is that the whole 50 minutes are devoted to planting this lamp in the basement. And then later on in the series, there's this like very quick discount moment where they just take
Meadow just takes the lamp.
Takes it away, and like that entire series has been that entire episode has been completely negated by this one very kind of throwaway action, which I think is so funny. It's just a very very tense episode. I think the editing is really well between all of the family and the people that are kind of following them and seeing what they're up to.
What do you think about that one song that they used just on repeat?
Oh my god, yeah. Well, they use a couple of songs, and what I really like about them is that they blend them together really well. You can always tell what member of the family is being followed and which characters you're watching because it's got a particular piece of music attributed to them. So I know one of them I remember was Every Breath You Take by the Police. I remember that one quite well, and that was kind of juxtaposed with the one that you're on about, which is like. Yeah, like
the themes are like a cop show.
Yeah, like a 70s cop show. But honestly, it was just a really great episode back. I didn't expect to enjoy it, but it really just made me want to. It compelled me to carry on watching the season at a really fast pace because it was such a great starter.
It's really unconventional. I like you say the lamp doesn't really pay off, and just the amount of incriminating conversations Tony has in the spot where the lamp would be, almost framed and like with the space in between the characters highlighting. But if they had that lamp, they would have got Tony. Also, I don't know, it's a subtle piece of foreshadowing, but I guess it ties into another point that the FBI are like portrayed as kind of like quite scummy, and like they're almost as kind of not horrible, but like in a lot of the things they say and do, that they're not like, oh, these are the conventional good guys that we're going to root for.
Yeah.
You know, it's like these are people that are going after the other people. You know, and they've probably committed less crimes, but they're not perfect. But you kind of highlight that in them all just being very pervy and spying on Adriana. But then they're quite literally setting their sights on Adriana, which at the end of series 3, they act on. So the episode wasn't completely wasted because they're looking at her and they realise. I guess they're not looking at her and being like, oh, she could be a good performer. They're like checking her out. But eventually they make a move on Adriana at the end of season 3, which carries on into season 4. So I guess it wasn't.
And I imagine we'll probably carry on later on in the show, which I'm not looking forward to at all. And you're just fucking grinning over there because you know how it all plays out.
Okay. On to episode 2, which I think is maybe the most impressive feat. Because Nancy Marchand died in between season 2 and 3. I don't think she was in very good health in season 2, which I think hampered like the type of scenes she was in. She was always kind of indoors and always kind of in her house, always kind of sitting down. But you've got the awful CGI, but I think it's very impressive. They would obviously set up a subplot with the FBI
and the airline tickets.
And if she's going to testify, and then this maid character was going to be a big part of it. I think living with Livia. I think they got a whole thing, and they probably had to scrap that. I don't know how quickly. I heard that from the behind the scenes stuff that this episode was scrambled together quite quickly, and it's impressive that they managed to pull it off the way they did.
Yeah.
I don't think the effects are very good. I think it would be more powerful if the last time Tony saw her was that argument about the airline tickets. I think the scene they have was weird because they had to just reuse like dialogue, and I don't think the special effect for the face was very convincing for me anyway. Also, the whole Artie Booker bad character, his subplot in the episode where they show a scene pretty much in full from season 1, that confrontation. I'm not trusting the audience to remember it. I don't like that.
I never thought the CGI was as bad as you thought it. When I saw it, I realised something was off, definitely. But I really think that if you hadn't mentioned anything to me, it would have gone by unnoticed.
Yeah, I don't know. I get that. Maybe because I knew of it. But I was kind of I was
And I
aware
still
of it.
think that having that scene retains the element of it being a very, very sudden death as well. It doesn't feel like it's going to lead on to a death either. It does still come out of nowhere, even with that scene in mind, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's a very impressive episode. I think that the funeral set piece is
It's excellent.
really good. Also, hearing I don't want to go too much on behind the scenes, but like the fact that everyone was just laughing their heads off throughout that scene. Like they only had a few days to get it, and no one could take it seriously because of some of the things that happened. I think we get to see more of Carmela's parents because Livia dies, and I like them both. I think that scene's like one of the first real great moments we get.
And Carmela really has a great part in that scene where she kind of speaks out as to the real nature and reality of the relationship that they had with Livia. Because at that point, no one really has anything nice to say about her, so they're all
like
just
very
quiet.
Yeah.
And then she's the one who actually has the courage to speak out about her in a very.
It's just like her last passive aggressive act was making everyone. Well, like, did she not want a funeral?
Yeah, I think.
But like everyone kind of having to gather around and like just be really miserable because of it.
Yeah.
Not because she's died, because they had to go to the funeral.
She didn't want a funeral, I think, because she didn't think that anybody would come. I think that's what a character says at some point, which is really sad. But it's also kind of true, and it feels like everyone was sort of forced to go there out of respect more than actually wanting to, which you really get a sense of.
I guess series 3, as it goes on, you get like more different perspectives as well. So you get the third episode where Christopher gets made, and then suddenly Paulie, who's like primarily kind of a comedic character, you suddenly see through Christopher's eyes that he's like got to deliver to him, and he's like nasty. And then obviously the episode where Silvio's like suddenly just like an absolute bastard because you're seeing him through the eyes of someone.
Well, before we talk about that, should we talk about, because it's before, isn't it, the episode with Jennifer? It kind of focuses a lot on her.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
It's just dropping on me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I want to talk about it, but I want you to go first.
Well, I think it's good that Melfi gets a plot line. I guess the dramatic device of woman gets raped and then has to conquer it as like an empowering message is a overused and weird one, especially when it's just written by men. Like I don't know, because it's I think it's a horrible scene and it's obviously meant to be horrible. And the moment where she doesn't tell Tony at the end is one of the kind of most frustrating in the series, but like deliberately so. Where I don't know, because like I think it's good, but then I don't. I think it's kind of, I guess, having the primary motivation of like a bunch of characters just being these two very like violent and like visceral misogynistic attacks. I'm not saying the show is like anti-women by having them, but I guess having them and then the primary motivation is just I don't know. I wonder if there is a way of making this season and having the kind of drama that happens between the characters without kind of framing the violence and making it as explicit and horrible against the women, or if the only reason they get the audience to care is by making it shocking and as horrible as possible, talking about the attack and the rape. I don't know. I mean, I can't answer. I remember, I think at the time this came out, this was a very controversial episode, for all the same reasons that I'm going to talk about now. So if that's the intent, to just kind of shock, it worked. I don't know, that's my big criticism of season 3. Like, if you take those two scenes out, or if you suddenly frame them differently, does it work? I don't think it does. I think it's, for a show that's kind of, I guess, like, I wouldn't say the female characters are bad, but it's primarily kind of written by men for men, to suddenly introduce this extra element of, like, a lot of misogyny. And I think this season doubles down on a lot of the more horrible aspects of the characters. Like, Tony's, like, very racist at the start of the season. Kind of, he's been racist throughout, but, like it's almost like.
Do you think the showrunners were worried that people still rooted for him in a sense where they thought that he was a good person?
Yeah, I think that the whole, you have more artistic license when you're like the most popular show and you're on your third series. You can kind of just do whatever you want, and the network's not going to say you can't do that, because at this point it's probably the most popular show on HBO, if not in the country. But yeah, I think maybe that. the thing I'll boil it down to is me myself. I'm not a woman. I've never kind of experienced anything like as shocking as kind of this episode. So I can, as hard as it is to watch that scene, the scene can end, and maybe I'll feel very uncomfortable. But I can move on. It's not going to kind of trigger anything in me. If I was showing the show The Sopranos to someone and they were like, "Oh, I stopped watching it in season 3," I would be like, "Yeah, okay." I wouldn't argue with them or ask them. I would know why they stopped watching in season 3 because of this. And I guess maybe that's a problem. I don't know. This is definitely the moment where if I was like, The Sopranos is for everyone, it suddenly narrows down to The Sopranos is suddenly mostly a show for men. I think it probably alienated a lot of the female viewers. But I don't know, it's not a woman. You have to, maybe there's like a bunch of women that love The Sopranos and they're like, oh no, it's a very empowering episode. I genuinely don't know. I've read some criticism of it, but it's good. But I genuinely
Well, I
don't
think that's
know.
it, right? There's no definitive opinion. I'm sure if you talk to a large set of women who'd watch the episode, you get a lot of contrasting opinions. It might lean more one way to the other. I think from what you're talking about, I would also agree that I think there would be more women that dislike the episode than like it. But I still think there would be some split because it is that kind of controversial subject that would divide people and their opinions on it.
I have less a problem with university than I do with employee of the month, just because I don't know. I think university is like constructed in a way because it's introducing new characters. I mean, you could say it's worse that these new characters' kind of primary purpose is to make the point of the episode, and the motivation is to make you hate Ralph, whereas employee of the month is all about Melfi. But I don't know. It also feels kind of lazy that they're like, oh, we haven't done anything with Melfi. What if she gets raped? That's just the thing to do with this character because we can't think of anything else to do with her.
That's true. I wouldn't say that. I think from my perspective, I wouldn't say that the showrunners did that because they wanted something to happen to Melfi and that was what their mind immediately jumped to. It's not like it's up to this moment she's just someone who is a psychiatrist. We see her family life. We see what she's like with her own therapist, what she's like with her, I guess, her divorced husband, with her son as well. I mean, at this point, she's not the center of the show, but she's still been fleshed out in a way that we know the kind of person that she is. She's not someone who was written to be raped.
I think before and after this episode, though, pretty much she's like 95% of her scenes are about Tony, centered around Tony.
Yeah,
which
and that's
is
a problem.
fair enough because that's what the show is. But I guess this is the one episode that's not. This is like actually her story, and I like at the end when it's a scene with Tony, and is she going to tell him? And I imagine that's the moment where you like at this point the show has successfully made you completely angry with the system and the law, which I guess is a good thing to point out that how often victims of rape actually get justice through the police. I mean, I think there's like 2% of all the rape cases that are submitted to the police, which is like I think only about 40% of rapes that happen as well, actually end up in a conviction. And this idea of like really kind of wanting justice, especially when she knows who it is, and her not telling Tony, making the audience frustrated. I think that's a very important point and very well done.
Yeah, Melfi's writing has I think suffered since that episode. I feel like early on you see more of her own private life, which I liked, and now even though those scenes with her and Tony in therapy still serve a purpose, I feel like they're almost becoming slightly repetitive because we talked about this in the first episode. That's what depression is. It's a cycle, isn't it? So if you want to stay realistic to the mental illness, you have to have the conversations revolve around the same topic in those sessions. But from an entertainment purpose, it kind of gets a bit tiresome after a while watching those same scenes. Feel like they're talking about the same things. Tony's still acting the same way. Melfi's still acting the same way, with the same kind of reserved sort of calmness to her. But yeah, I think she has been worse off since that episode. The episode itself, I think, is good, but I wish that we saw more of her private life like we did in the first two series. I wish we had. She became a very, very interesting character as soon as we saw her with Elliot, her psychiatrist, because she went from being this character who is there to allow Tony to talk about his feelings to be a character who then talks about her own feelings and how she reacts to her patients. And I really, really like that because all of a sudden we see the effects that Tony is having on her and how she's trying to counteract that and react to it. And in the second series, we also have some really great stuff with her where she kind of resists going back into therapy with him again because one of her patients committed suicide. And there's kind of a resistance there that is a very, very important part of their relationship. And I feel like that sort of gets lost a little bit, and then actually it kind of feels like it gets saved a little bit in series 4 towards the end, where he kind of throws her away, and then as soon as stuff between him and Calm happens, he calls her up again and decides against asking to see her. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Yeah, all I remember is this is like spoilers for season 4. I guess we're getting straight into it right now. But I love I don't know. This isn't really a spoiler, but the thing I love about The Sopranos, I guess, is the family element. As much as I love season 4, the way it ends, it sets up for it sets up for season 5 where like one of the core components of the show, the family dynamic, just isn't there. Like you just don't have the scenes between Tony and Carmela as much, and like that whole like family aspect of the show is kind of shattered. And I guess that's the point they're trying to make, the separation. But it just doesn't. It lacks that magic. And like it's like a thing with Tony. I don't like Tony and Melfi in season 5 very much. I remember that being weird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just don't. The whole with him stopping and then trying to start again, I don't think was very good. When he does finally start again, I think he gets back to normal. But I remember there's like a weird subplot the first few episodes of season 5 that I didn't like much at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just me slacking off season 5.
That episode, the Jennifer episode from series 3, I found interesting for the same reasons that you did. But I guess
Well, I guess if you take the scene out or imply it, or just it happens off screen, does the episode work? I'd say it doesn't. I'd say the episode only works if you show this horrific acting in quite like explicit, horrific kind of detail. I don't know. I'm wondering if there's like a more tasteful way to have someone be raped, but then like that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say.
So yeah, that's a strange thing to say. So my take on it is that you could take that scene out and it would still have the same effect, because I don't think that because that scene happens so early on in that episode, and the rest of the episode is primarily devoted to seeing how she deals with it. Right? You take that scene out and you show that she has the power to rise above it, and even though it's obviously affected her a lot, as it would, she's not crumbled under the feet, I guess, is I think an important part of what that episode is trying to say. Now, whether that's the right way to go about showing someone who's empowered is a different question entirely. But if the episode is trying to show that she is resilient and that she's strong, and I think that it does that. Is it unrealistic? Yeah, probably. But I think if that's what the show's going for, and that's the impression that I get, you could take that scene out and it would still have the same effect, because it's about showing you how she deals with it, rather than showing the act itself, which I think is a lot more important.
Yeah.
You remember what she's like towards the rest of the episode?
Yeah, I do.
She acknowledges that it's affected her, but she still has the power to.
Yeah, what I wonder is if any of that would land if that scene just wasn't in it, or it was less visceral. Because I feel like the shock and the like how horrible that scene is, almost you're not as traumatized as Melfi, but you're kind of shocked as well, and you're almost kind of you further empathize with it. You would not be empathizing with her anyway, because you've experienced that too in such a visceral and horrible way.
Whereas I would say with the Tracy episode, showing her death on screen, I think is probably more important, because as hard as it is something to acknowledge, I think that specific scene shows a lot of character. With him specifically, and the kind of person that he is.
You could argue that scene's worse because it only really happens to further motivate, I don't know, the male characters as it goes on. That it's less about that moment of violence and more about the reaction to all the men who are there and how they deal with it, and then that kind of motivates things going on.
I shouldn't be smiling, but I'm just laughing because of the Silvio line where he's like, he killed that woman. I can't remember what.
Yeah, I mean it just highlights. I think we'll skip over another toothpick and then come back to the university. But I think the university is like a better episode of the show. I think it does the great thing of telling two stories parallel to each other to kind of compare and contrast between Meadows' roommate, who's kind of suffering from mental health issues, and Tracy, who is suffering from just being poor. And I guess it kind of creates a contrast between two people in troubled situations one societal, one kind of, I don't know, emotional or internal, someone who's rich and someone who's poor, and then the ambivalence or the inability to help from Meadow and Tony. I think it's very interesting. I think it's very well done. Obviously, that scene of violence is it is horror. It's so horrible, and the fact that I think the episode is existing to set up to that moment, which it does well. I think I don't think it would work if it wasn't shown in such detail, and you can say that's really sexist, and yeah, it is. But I guess the episode in itself is really asking you to empathize with the women. So it's not like it's, I don't know, you follow Ralph being a great guy and then he does that at the end. I think it's completely warped. And you see people in different light. Like you see Sylvia as a monster when it's through the eyes of one of the women that he's exploiting. And you can say, they choose to work there. They're not being exploited. But when you see the conditions they're living in and they come from broken homes, they've got to pay for their childcare. Yeah, but they don't have a choice because of the economic situation they're in.
The episode itself is excellent, I think. But coming off of what you said, you're right. It does not serve just a one episode purpose. I think once you watch that episode and you see the reaction that the men have to something like this, it changes the way that you look at them for the rest of the show, and that's how powerful that one episode is. I remember.
I think both. I don't know about you. Maybe I'm just more angry. But both episodes got me to the point where I would have just accepted Tony shooting someone on the spot and being like, yeah, he did the right thing with the rapist and Ralph.
Because I think at that point, the Tracy episode, what was the episode actually called? University, did you say?
Yeah.
University, yeah.
Not college.
Not college. Different one. With University, up to that point, Ralph to me was a character that I just didn't like anyway. It wasn't like he was a nice guy. He's slimy.
He's a scumbag, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Gladiator.
What a prick, yeah, like in Gladiator. And that episode, as it's going on, you dislike him even more and more, and then it peaks right at the end where he kills her. And in that moment, when Tony starts hitting him, I just didn't want him to stop. I just wanted him to beat the guy to death. Which is crazy when you think about the sympathy episode from Series 4, how you can really just change your mind on someone like that and what it says about you.
I think it really kind of demonstrates just how disposable people are to these guys as well. Like seeing someone's life just be taken away for nothing, and the fact that they don't even remember. And as the audience, it does the thing where it makes the characters the protagonists, and it knows that your fucking dumb monkey brain's just gonna forget and just care about whatever the current storyline is and forget that this happened. But I think it really is maybe the most important episode of the show in a way. You just see obviously Ralph did this and they are pissed off, but they do forget. It's kind of it's just this person's life just meant nothing.
Yeah.
Do you not
think that kind of? Do you think that's says something about the audience as well? Because we kind of forget too, don't we? We have to remind ourselves that episode happened. When we watch an episode later on in the show where we start to like Ralph, it's like that episode all of a sudden means nothing to us.
Yeah.
We do become the characters in the show, and we have that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Where we just let people off for things like that because they're willing to change. I don't think that's strange. That's crazy.
I can say this because Tony and Johnny won't listen to this. But I could see the Tony and Johnny argument if they were watching the show and got to season 4 of the show's bad because it makes you try and like Ralph, instead of just saying he's a bad. But I guess the show is I think the show is quite morally complex and interesting, and the fact that it tries to make you the easy thing to do this season would to be Ralph killed in the finale, like they always do. Yeah. Obviously they kill someone else, but the fact they keep him around and that they have him, he's not a villain. Well, he is the Sopranos villain for this season, but he's not against Tony. He's in his organization. He's earning him a lot of money. He's not plotting to kill Tony. In fact, Tony actually has to give him a promotion, and he is his best earner. It's I think it's more interesting to keep him around and then test the audience by having him do not good things, but having him be a funny character in a way, and then you've got to remind yourself what a monster he is. And
I think part of why you have to remind yourself of what he did is because that episode is so self-contained that character that he killed only exists in that one episode. That's why you almost forget in a way. Because it's not like Tracy was a character that they built up from the first episode. She exists in one episode and one episode only, and I think that's why it kind of escapes our mind a little bit when we think about it. The other thing that I wanted to say a minute ago, talking about how it changes the way that you see characters for the rest of the show. When I watched University, I went back and I rewatched the pilot and the first couple episodes of the show with a friend, and I was astounded because I realised that up until University, I just accepted that the men in the show will just be like this to women, and that's just who they are, and not even kind of having a problem with it, but willing to overlook it in some way. But I go back to the pilot, and Silvio's been like that since the beginning. And when you see him in that episode from Tracy's point of view, he's a horrible guy. It turns out that from the first episode, he was always like that. You just didn't see it from someone else's perspective. You saw it from the perspective of the guys, their crew, their friends, right? And that's the crazy thing to go back and rewatch on. How these characters have always been like this. It's just now you're seeing them through somebody else's eyes for the first time. It really changes how you see them for the rest of the show. Since that episode, I've not been able to think of Silvio in a different way. He was someone that I used to like, and he just kind of got more and more worse for me. And I don't think his writing changed much. It was just University that really, really changed the way that I look. The other thing about University, the reason why it's so effective, is because of Tony's attitude towards the entire issue. From the moment you see her, you can tell that there's something desperate about her, that she needs help, that she's in trouble. And Tony, for the entire episode, refuses to accept some form of responsibility as her employer and help her out, even though she really, really needs it. And then at the end, he really does pay for it with her death, and he realises, I guess he kind of does realise it. You can see it in his therapy meetings later on in the show, that he realises that he should have done the right thing and helped her out. But when you see that she dies, it's heartbreaking because he had every opportunity to step in, and he just didn't do anything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, really well-structured episode, and you could make that argument that this female character was written to be killed off in the episode, and that is quite bad in and of itself, but it serves a greater purpose, and that's what's important about University, and that's why it's one of the best episodes of the show, I think.
Yeah. The episode in between those two fucking heavy-hitting episodes is the one where Bobby Bacala Sr. does the hit.
Oh my god. That's why Series 3 is the best series. Because it has some of the most tragic episodes, but then it has episodes in between that just keep having the
Even that episode is quite tragic, because it's set across multiple funerals, because these old men are dying. And the episode's called Another Toothpick, because every time one of them dies, just kind of how disposable these guys' lives are. But yeah, the hit from Bobby Bacala Sr., which I guess motivates Bobby to kind of get really upset, and Bobby becomes like a more prominent character throughout the show. It's a funny thing.
It's maybe I think it's the funniest scene of the show so far. Still, I was laughing so much, and what makes it really funny is that it's not like those very, very quick kind of cut to gag moments with Junior later on and with Furio opening the door where it's very quick and over. It's a very elongated scene that is just so funny from the moment he drives up to the house and the camera pans up that staircase leading up to the front door, and you think, fucking hell, this is going to be a funny scene. It's just there covering you the entire time. But the really sad and ironic spin to it is that he doesn't even die from the cancer that the character was set up with. He dies in a car crash that happens right after that scene. It's sad, but fuck me, is it funny.
Well, he likes the cigarette as well. Yeah, so that's that episode. Alright. Should we talk about Jackie Jr. now?
Yeah, let's do that.
Go from the series to the character. So Ethan, what do you think about young, what's he called in Godfather 3? Yeah.
Well, what's the character called?
I can't remember.
Well, all I know him is as Sonny's bastard son. That's the character.
Yeah, he's like that. He's like the made-for-TV version of Andy Garcia.
Oh, he definitely is. Jackie Jr. is the guy who's like, people want to kind of like study and get a good job, but he just wants to be in the mafia. He just wants to be like his dad. I find it really sad that the April bloodline is completely fucked by the end of Series 3 because they're all dead. Apart from Rose.
I feel sorry for Rosie. I mean, she goes through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
I think, I like the Jackie thing. I guess because Meadow wants to go to Berkeley, and then Meadow goes to Berkeley. And I like her university part. I think Meadow is like the most like She's like, if you want someone to like the character who's not fucking, you're not gonna be like, oh, they killed someone. No, I don't like them. Meadows your bet. Like she doesn't do it. She's like maybe the most like moral person.
Oh, definitely. I mean, her like Meadow in the last few episodes of series 3 when Jackie Jr. dies, when she gets that revelation, she just becomes. Well, she doesn't become. She always was, but she just really is so strong in this final few episodes.
I guess Jackie Jr. you see through Meadow, right? Because she starts by dating this guy who's like very pretentious, and then Tony's fucking racist to him.
Yeah.
And then he breaks up with her, and then he's kind of like an asshole to her roommate. And you kind of see all that. And then you know Jackie Jr. because you've seen him. He's been doing his own kind of criminal things. But there's like a moment in the mid-season where they suddenly kind of meet, and it's like encouraged for them to go out by the parent. They're like, oh yeah,
because of the Italian heritage.
Yeah, and then they get on that they kind of go to like a party together or something.
Yeah, do you remember when they robbed that charity event?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's like one of the early Jackie Juniors, right?
Yeah, that is.
So I like that whole element. I like Jackie Jr. in general, like being pissed, where's Richie?
Yeah.
You know?
He has a couple of episodes where I kind of like him a lot less, just because he treats Meadow pretty badly.
Well, yeah, obviously you get to the point where.
But apart from that, he just seems like a really. He comes across kind of very cocky at the beginning as well. Well, I think when you get to know him, he just seems like a very likable guy. He's down to earth. He's nice to people.
Well, I guess his problem is that he just wants to be in the business, and he shouldn't be. You know, it's a bit like Carlo Rizzi in The Godfather. You know, where he's kind of going out with Connie and then betrays Michael. It's a similar thing where it's tragic because he breaks up with Meadow, and then it's kind of accidental how Ralph ends up leading to his killing. Ralph's just telling that story of like he couldn't go to that night, and that night was legendary, and that's kind of.
It inspires something in Jackie Jr.
Yeah, to try it, but I guess the situation's different, or they fucked up in their execution. But it's such a horrible scene where you know after that scene that he's dead. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
And
that impending feeling of knowing that bullet's going to get to him at some point just makes that last couple of episodes really, really hard for him to watch. Or at least we get some good Michael Kenneth Williams content. Is that his name, that actor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in that one scene. It's so weird.
But he's got a child who's good at chess. I remember that quite well.
It's because D'Angelo taught him. I like. Well, I hope that slam on the bed got picked up by the mic. But yeah, I like. I mean, I don't like that he dies, but I think it's very well done. I think that the whole like debating, like, is he going to be killed, is he not? And then it's Ralph, you know, in the villain's hideout that he inherited from Richie. That building that the villains hang out in. He was like, yeah, you do it. And then like
they were always
the aftermath to it.
Yeah, but I think
there's a moment where I think that Tony doesn't want him, or Tony's not going to.
I think
there's like a moment, I believe.
Well, Tony's conflicted because he always liked the kid because of his father, because him and Jackie full stop were really close. But he also knows that the mafia is the mafia, and you reap what you sow. And I think that I think secretly he never wanted the kid to die, but he realized that that's how things had to go. So he was pushed. I think he was pushing Ralphie to make that decision, whereas Ralphie was the one who I think was even more conflicted because he's in a relationship with Jackie Jr.'s mum, right? Aunt Rose.
I think I spoiled for you before when you're doing a season 4 predictions that he breaks up with her, because I thought that actually happened on the episode he died. I thought he was that scummy. But no, it's very early on in season 4 he breaks up with her.
Yeah, because he starts seeing Janice for a few.
Yeah, it's not as scummy as I thought. I thought the moment he died, he broke up with her. I thought it was that soon.
I think it is that soon.
It's not the episode he dies that he breaks up with Rosie, though, is it? Because I remember you had.
It's not. It's the episode afterwards. It is definitely.
I think it's the second. I think it's probably episode 2.
Because his whole thing is that he can't deal with her emotions. So when she talks about Jackie Jr.'s death one more time, it's just too much for him, and he breaks up with her and says, "I'm sorry, I can't be the person for you right now. This is not what I do," which is very shit. But that does happen very soon. I mean, it happened. It's not. I don't know if it happens within the episode, but it definitely happens a very shittily soon after. Yeah.
I like that. It's not a Sopranos death that gets covered up and like, oh, witness protection, like they always do. Like they kind of frame it. and then you see everyone react to it, and obviously it has a big effect on Meadow. I think the season finale is very good where Junior sings the song, and Meadow goes. We're jumping right ahead now, but I like.
We'll come back to Gloria and stuff in a minute.
Yeah.
But that finale is what makes Meadows stand out so much, because while everyone's trying to cover it up, and almost all of them
everyone
secretly
knows,
know
but they're pretending not to.
Meadows the only one who actually tries to. She doesn't even try. She just does speak out, and she doesn't take the shit, which I really like. And then Jackie Jr.'s death continues to affect her over series 4, which is also very, very. Well, it's believable, isn't it? The one thing that I don't want with characters' deaths in shows is for them to just be swept under the rug and just pretend like they didn't happen. Like, I'm glad that stuff with Sal comes back in this series as well. I'm glad that deaths don't just. It's not just the end of that character's being discussed in the show. Jackie Jr.'s death, like I said, continues to affect Meadow, and I think that's really important.
I think his death kind of highlights the hypocrisy as well. That to go, there has to be this plausible deniability, and just the kind of hatred of black people and drugs, and just blaming it on all these things. You know, it's always black druggies. You know, like we can't do anything about them. You know, kind of. And I guess we're going to see in the Sopranos film, it's alluded to in series 4 as well. What's the area? Newark. Newark, and how kind of Newark was an Italian American neighborhood and kind of became like a black neighborhood, and like the kind of turf war that happened in Newark, which the show kind of alludes to a lot, but that never really like goes into in great detail. I guess it's kind of linked to like the racism that a lot of the characters have, but I also think it just kind of a lot of them are like kind of rich conservative suburban people. And I guess it does highlight, like, season 4 we had that thing we were talking about, that argument that Meadow and Carmela have about that book, you know. And I think that's when the show really highlights that these are just very kind of conservative people, somehow, and that the hypocrisy of trying to be like a good Catholic when also your husband's a mob boss, and you know.
Yeah, whereas I was always under the assumption that she was a lot more liberal than he was, but it turns out that she really does have some quite traditionalist beliefs that come out.
Yeah, definitely.
In certain episodes. So do you want to talk about Gloria, Pine Barrens?
Should we do the Santa episode first? Just because it's just really quickly. I think it's a really good episode. I think you got a lot of Soprano dreams and flashbacks. I like the revelation that Pussy's been an informant all along, basically, for the whole time, and you get those flashbacks. Just the idea of them missing him because he was Santa, but they can't talk about him. They're kind of, I don't know. Paulie, he's a comedy character, definitely. But it's in this, like, he's very, like, by the book. Like, I think he's definitely the one that he could be your best friend, but then you are a rat, and he would just turn. Like, he's very kind of binary in that way. I think watching their reactions is great. Watching Bobby try and take on the role of Santa is funny, because
he tells the kids to fuck off.
Fuck you, Sam. Whoa! But I think that Steve Sheriff is not like the most gifted actor, but I think he plays Bobby with such like a sincerity that he does bad acting really well in that scene. And just, I think the idea of a Sopranos Christmas episode in that way is really funny.
This was really the series 2 was really the series where Bobby started to kick off as like an actual character rather than just the guy who helps out Uncle June.
I always have conversations with you where I'm further on the show and you're like, I'll say something like, oh, I like Bobby. I'm like, what? Bobby? And I'm like, two seasons. And you'll be like, Bobby's great.
Yeah,
like,
Bobby
that's me with Vito now. I'm like, Vito is so good. You're like, oh, fuck Vito. In like 2 seasons, you're going to tell me he's just the best character in the whole show.
Yeah, it's because right now, when I think of Vito, I told you this before the podcast, he to me is just the character that killed Jackie Jr. that put the bullet. I know he was acting under orders, but that's just what I associate him with.
Yeah, I guess it's a similar thing to Ralph, not liking him. Right. I think we should talk about Gloria, because Gloria leads into Pine Barrens.
Yeah, Gloria's, I think out of all the mistresses, for lack of a better
Marder! Come on, you got the word.
She's probably the one that I enjoy watching the most and I think is the most engaging. I think there's a lot of things that factor into this. I think a lot of it is because with Gloria, I think that's when the character that's when Tony starts to realise the most what he looks for in his, I guess, girlfriends that Jen highlights for him in their therapy sessions, where he's kind of attracted to unstable, unhinged characters that lash out at him because they're so reminiscent of his mother.
The fact that he's like with Carmela, who's like pretty much like she like kind of deep supports him despite all the fucking shit he puts up with, and the fact that he kind of just almost ignores Carmela to kind of look for danger
and hazardous relationships.
Yeah,
Sure.
I guess he kind of likes the threat and the chase of that, and just that kind of conflict in his life. I think Gloria's a really good character. I think she's very well acted. I think she feels like a fully three-dimensional person in a way that I don't think Tony's Russian girlfriend does.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like she has a life outside of Tony. I like how they meet in Melfi's office, how they kind of pretend that episode you were talking about where Melfi kind of knows, but they're lying to Melfi. Their breakup. Obviously, we'll talk about the comedy scenes in Pine Barrens, but I think Pine Barrens as a whole works so well, and it's the highest rated episode of the show for a reason, because it's very much about the relationship between Tony and Gloria. The breakup, I mean, it's horrible. Obviously, the revelation in season 4, as well, that whole episode, which is what is the biggest contrast between an A and a B plot in a single episode of The Sopranos.
Definitely.
In difference between the strength.
Even though that they're both about the same topic, which is quite funny.
Like, I think she's a fantastic character. I know when someone is going to be a good character when my dad remembers them when we're watching the show. Like, he was like, "Oh, I remember this really clearly." The first time we saw her on screen and stuff like that, this is definitely going to be a big thing, and it was excellent.
Yeah.
What do you think? Or should we talk about Pine Barrens?
Oh, we could just talk about Pine Barrens because I agree with everything that you said. I feel like I kind of said what I wanted to about Gloria pretty much.
What do you think about Pine Barrens, Ethan?
Pine Barrens, like I said earlier, was very similar to College in the things that I liked about it. It took a very isolated story, in fact, two very isolated stories, kind of focused on them, set this kind of a parallel thing going on where they both complement one another in a really effective way, and just have that, and it's it's just amazing. Pine Barrens is great because Pine Barrens is about Pine Barrens. Half of it is about Christopher and Paul being lost in the woods, trying to find their way back to the car, while also trying to find a guy that they think that they've shot, who they are unsure if he's actually dead or not, even though they're sure that they shot him in the head.
I think the reason it works so well is all the stuff before they take him to the woods, of just how avoidable it is. Like Paulie being an asshole. I guess the episode's jump to the end quick. The point of this episode is just to highlight the arguments, the kind of rift that's growing between Paulie and Tony,
Definitely.
which in the finale comes up with the whole Ralph thing, and he doesn't like Ralph. And then Paulie gets nabbed at the end of the season as well. So that's the only real long-term purpose of it. But Paulie just provokes this guy. I think the fight scene they have is very funny.
No.
They have to deal with this body. The fact that they don't go to Roy Rogers for breakfast. Like the confidence of the idea they've got.
This guy killed 16 Czechoslovakians.
It's just all that setup, I think, is what makes it funnier when it actually starts. I think if it just started with them trying to dispose of the body, it wouldn't be nearly as good as all that, 15 minutes of setup. The fact that the phone connection isn't very good with Tony, so they're struggling to communicate. I think it's fine.
Definitely.
Tony has the meeting with the Russian, which kind of gives the episode stakes that if this guy gets back, Tony's could be dead in that meeting, And that additional.
And it also has a lot of other really hilarious moments towards the episode, especially just between Paulie and Christopher. They're trying to survive out in the woods. With tomato ketchup and taking the carpet off of the van and things like that. It's just very, really, really funny.
Yeah, that's definitely the meat of the episode. It's just the comedy.
Yeah. Although I would have to say that comfortably the best thing about the episode for me is that element of ambiguity, the supernatural element of shooting a guy in the head and him still getting up and running off.
It's so well done because it's slightly hazy and it's really quick. And you need to slow mo it, but it's just the fact that it's a quick shot of him just getting up, and you're like, you got him in the head, right? Because it's so quick.
It's the look that they give each other as well, having seen someone be shot in the head and then get up and start moving again. I think Pine Barrens would go from being one of the best episodes to being one of the worst episodes if you saw the guy again, because that takes away all the element of mystery and intrigue behind that episode. Are they going to find him again? And it's better left unsolved. It's definitely better left unsolved, and I'm glad that they have the bravery to leave something as open ended as that. Where I was kind of worried that they wouldn't. I even asked you when I finished the episode if that was something that happened.
Yeah, I think a lot of the tension is just in the episode that Tony's dealing with a lot of shit that episode, and it's like it is just an inconvenience for him. He's like, just deal with it, Like it's so simple. Why can't you just pick up, Sylvia's thing because he's sick? And the fact that it escalates from it to completely nothing. The bit where Paulie loses his shoe, mix it with the relish, just how
the part where Bobby comes out in his hunting uniform.
I mean
that's so funny.
That's just the funniest thing, and it's made so much funnier by James Gandolfini's like laugh. Obviously, the behind the scenes thing, he was wearing a massive strap-on dildo, which is what got that laugh. Like it's so funny. You can see Dominic, who plays Junior, almost laughing. Like, he's true. Like he doesn't normally. Like, he's you never see Junior smile really, but you can see him like really holding back in that moment. Yeah, that's a really good. It's Pine Barrens. What can I say?
It's classic. On the level of Ozymandias.
Now, Ozymandias is like... I think Ozymandias is great because so much happens in the plot in that episode and it all comes together. Whereas Pine Barrens is almost like... I guess Tony and Gloria's relationship, a lot happens, but it really is just this like side story that feels like in a world of its own. That's what makes it so great. Is there anything else in season 3?
Probably. Not off the mind. Do we have any good arty content in series 3?
I can't even remember, to be honest.
He doesn't shove a rifle in someone's face, or someone talks to him. He talks too much in a restaurant, and that's a bit of a problem.
I guess we introduced Johnny Sachs in season 3. He kind of comes into it.
Because he moves to New Jersey.
He's got this house in New Jersey, and that's the first kind of link to New York. We're going to talk more about Johnny Sachs in season 4, obviously. I think he's a very good character. I like him quite a lot. Not like his character, but not I like him as a person, but I like the dynamic that he gives the show. The scene where Junior goes to a funeral and then the cops come and he runs away is like a really funny, just random scene. Thinking about random scenes.
I like the fallout between Tony and Ralph after university, because their relationship becomes so much more interesting when they're at each other's throats, but they're very, very passive about it, and they kind of talk about each other behind each other's backs without really confronting each other that often.
Yeah.
That's well explored.
As I said, I like that he doesn't die. This is a moment in season 2, but I like the moment where Tony and Junior are talking, and it's revealed that they have another brother.
Oh my god, yeah, you're right. I forgot about that.
And then he's like, whenever Johnny was talking about his simple brother, I thought he was talking about you, and then Junior's reaction to that. That's just a random moment in season 2 that's really funny. And never comes back. But anyway, season 3 of The Sopranos is good.
Series 4?
It's good as well. Should we have a break and then talk about it?
No, let's go straight into Series 4.
Hello, we are back with season 4 of The Sopranos, which in my opinion is the second best season of the show. Ethan, before we, in the previous episode, you made your predictions about season 4, so I guess I want to know, if it lived up to your expectations. You can remember anything you predicted?
I think I predicted something about Adriana being more developed with her new best friend they announced at the end of Series 3. I think that was mostly it, to be honest. I don't remember there being much more. I think at that point you told me about Ralph saying something about Johnny Sachs, his wife. And I also think I knew about the finale of the season, because you told me that it was an episode where things look like they're going a bit too well, and they start falling apart at some point.
Yeah.
I think all those predictions ended up being true, but I didn't have very many. So why did you like Series 4 so much?
Why do I like Series 4? It's got the worst episode of the show, by the way.
Is that the Christopher Columbus one?
Yeah, awful episode of you. I like Season 4 because I think that of any other season, I think it plays the long game. I think it's not afraid to set things up and just let them develop over like a number of episodes. So immediately, Carmela, who's probably my favourite character, has a lot to do in this season. Like, she wants kind of financial independence, and she's kind of pressing Tony about it. And obviously, because your perspective is always kind of Tony and things going on in his life, she'll mention something, and in like 2 episodes she'll be like, have you done this thing? And obviously you followed Tony, so you know he hasn't done it. He kind of comes up with a reason why he hasn't done it. Just kind of plots like that, like things with like the horse, which ends up being really important. That kind of comes out of nowhere and like plays over a number of episodes. Her relationship with Furia develops over a number of episodes. I guess the whole Adriana thing, the fact that you find in episode 2 or 3, she kind of gets confronted by the FBI, and then you just kind of see her in the background of shots, and you don't really get a sense of her internal life till she gets an episode about halfway through the season. Just the way things kind of play it in the background, and then they culminate in these incredible moments in the finale, where the kind of the crumbling relationship between Tony and Carmela just kind of comes to a head in like what is probably the best scene of any episode of the show. And episode 9, where in like a kind of heated, Tony kills Ralph with his bare hands over basically nothing. Just the way that the show's built to those moments, I think, is great. I don't know. I guess it's more that season 2, 3, 4. I think it's a very consistently well-paced and well-acted TV show. They have space for one-off episodes and moments. Ralph, I love that Ralph stuck around and now he's making himself more and more likable with each episode. Johnny Sacks coming into it, that great episode where Ralph almost dies because of just that. Again, that's a thing that plays over a number of episodes. It starts episode 1 or 2 where Ralph makes a joke. He tells Paulie Jr. hears it, laughs, tells Paulie, and Paulie tells Johnny Sacks. And then you've got that great episode, I think, which is called Wait, or The Wait, which is just, it's about a relationship between Johnny and Ginny, which I think is great. Just going to look through the other episodes.
That was one of the things that jumped out to me quite a lot for Series 4. I think from a plot perspective, what I really enjoyed about it was how this very, very small and minor incident can escalate out of proportion to the point where, I mean, two massive sides could go to war with each other over this thing, and then it doesn't, but I guess the feud from that still sparks something later along the line with Tony and Johnny Sacks coming together to join forces a little bit because of a previous thing that happened in the series. And I feel like you can almost divide the season into those two halves, even though the half is defined by Ralph's death, which is more than halfway through the season.
Yeah.
It has Ginny Sacks' comment in one half, and then the Carmine going to be whacked in the second half. And I like that there's that kind of distinct separation where one builds off from the other quite well. And I actually really, really appreciate that early plot point. Because I actually think that I guess I sympathise a lot with Johnny, because he has this he hears this insult about his wife, someone that he obviously really cares about, to do with her weight, and I really appreciate that he would take that to heart because he understands the insecurities and worries that his wife has, and to hear people making these snide remarks behind his back is really, really unpleasant. So I'm glad that he takes a stand up against that. He kind of acts a bit unreasonably at times. I mean, an apology would be enough. Asking for Ralph to be killed is a bit of a step in the wrong direction. But I really, really appreciate that he has this firm stance at defending and protecting something like that he cares about.
The fact that Ralph is seconds away from being killed for that, but then he like beats someone to death and like lives, you know. It's this joke that he didn't even remember making that is almost the thing that kills him. And then later in the season, the thing that kills him isn't even something he does. It's an accident, you know. He doesn't. I think the horse is great. I think we've mentioned about like Tony and animals, which is kind of very fun in the pilot, and maybe there's like another couple of mentions of it. But I think he really kind of falls in love with this horse more than any person. Really, he really cares about this kind of horse. And I think the relationship he has with the woman who, I don't know if she trained the horse or something. There's the trainer of the horse, and then there's like another woman that's something to do with the horse somehow that Ralph is going out with and he's going out with. Which I think that relationship, all it really does is tell you about like Ralph's sex life. But you know, I think that's interesting. I think Ralph and Janice, and then Janice and Bobby, I quite like that, even though I guess it's rushed, but I guess that's the point. Bobby's pretty made out to be the most sympathetic character in the show at this point, as is Meadow. And as we say, Meadow is struggling with Jackie Jr. I like that as the season goes, she kind of goes. You see her find something she cares about, and she kind of is in the background for a few episodes. But then she's going to put her life together. You know, she's got like there's the moment where she has people over for dinner, and she's got an apartment and like a group of friends that you never really see again. But you know that she's kind of found her way. You know, she really struggled and she kind of made her way through it. I like that kind of just happens. It just happens. You know, the show doesn't do an episode where this is Meadows dealing with everything, and this, you know, there's that thing where she goes to a child psychologist who gives her really good advice, and then the parents are like, they will slag that psychologist off like seasons later for like telling Meadow like, yeah, you're an adult, you can, do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Oh god, I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, Junior's trial, I think is the funniest Junior subplot.
It's really funny.
I mean, the moment with the artist is the best. The moment where he falls down the steps. Two of the funniest Junior kind of moments. And
yeah,
I really like that. I mean, that steps one is perfectly timed. Oh, it's so good. I can't even describe why it's funny. I think
it's got a good setup, I guess.
it's just the way he's like, Allison! And the timing. I think the sound effects.
You're talking about the boom mic.
Yeah, of how gentle it is. I think the drawing one is just how funny the drawing is. And then his reactions to it. I just make that so funny.
I think that the reason why Series 4, for me, may be a little weaker than Series 3 is actually to do with the reason that you gave earlier, with plots being developed over the course of the season. I appreciate that a lot. It was a big issue with the first series, wasn't it? That things tend to be quite self-contained. They wouldn't really want to overstep the bounds of one episode to follow through with the subplot, whereas things that happen in this show feel like they span a lot more episodes.
Yeah, at this point, definitely.
Yeah. But I think that also, to me, kind of... I like that they do that, but for me, when I look back at the season as a whole, I feel like the gaps are too large between the really, really big moments. And there were too many filler episodes where things didn't feel like they were happening. There wasn't enough of a sense of immediacy to them. Whereas I think with Series 3, they have that idea of stretching things out across the series, but within each individual episode, it feels like things get accomplished and you learn more about characters, and the episodes themselves are really, really great, and I can remember them so well because they all had moments I really enjoyed. Whereas Series 4, I don't think I can really look back on that and do it.
Yeah, I think that's right, actually. I think it is a little bit like The Wire, where finding individual episodes is harder than just kind of the plot lines that happen. Like, if looking at the list of season 2 and 3 episodes, I remember much more clearly how this is this episode. Whereas season 4's attempts to do that I don't think are very good. You've got the Christopher Columbus one, which I don't think is very good. And I think there was a couple of other kind of gimmicky episodes.
There were some good ones. I thought the first episode of the season was fantastic, and it was a really great return to form. That got me excited about the rest of the season because it's the one where Tony points out who kills Christopher's dad in the diner.
I think that's definitely a good one. I like the episode. It's very different, but the one about the housing development kind of scam that they kind of start to do.
Yeah, because that's a large source of the conflict, the esplanade, isn't it, with Zellman?
I think season 4's got weird though, because it does have a different texture. I was looking at pictures of season 4. It's just not overlit or overexposed. There's something about it that just feels very different. I kind of
know what you mean. I think when I was watching the first episode of the series with my dad, coming off the back of the series 3, there was something different about the actual image that I was watching on the screen. I mentioned to my dad, and he didn't really see it very much, but it did feel like a new series of TV. For sure, it didn't feel like the third one at all.
Definitely. I guess Series 4 and 5 is when they take the 2-year gap instead of the year gap. And I guess maybe they kind of they botched the 9/11's happened, we've got to deal with it somehow. They mention it a few times, it doesn't really factor in massively. Don't think it should really. But I guess some of that might feel a bit rushed. I admit, actually talking about it, it is messy. I think it works for me just because when it's finished, I look at the finale and I'm just kind of so blown away by that episode and how it just perfectly ties together all the things, like Tony. The season, I don't know if there was like a financial crash or like money in the news or whatever, but obviously this season they got to deal with their finances. Carmela wants independence. Tony's hiding the money. Carmela takes some of the money. You've got that. You've got the nail. The episode ends with the nail, and it's a good ending of that episode. I remember you messaged me when it happened, where they kind of both know and decide not to say anything, and it's that kind of hypocrisy their entire relationship's built on. And it's not the biggest thing, is it? It's that woman she calls the house, and I guess it is a big thing. Yeah, Arena. It is a big thing, but it's not like, I don't know, they were doing it in a house and Carmela walked in and they have a big confrontation. It's just that is like something too much. And the fact that Tony kind of sleeps with her sister, right, or her cousin, just finding out that as well. I think just those tiny things that take Carmela over the edge.
But I think what really sets Carmela off in that final episode, which she even says, is it's not even really to do with the whoring and cheating on her as much, even though she says that obviously didn't help. It's the fact that she feels like he hasn't really shown her any love or appreciation for a very long time and just has no interest in her. And another thing that I've noticed about Tony over the show is that he feels like he can buy his way out of any problem. Anytime he's caused emotional suffering on anybody, he feels like a payout is what is the solution to that. And she says it herself as well. She talks about how when Tony fucks up or to show love, it's always about buying things. It's always about showing money. And she mentions how Furio genuinely seems like someone who's interested in her as a person. And I think that's what really sets her over the edge, the fact that she's in love with someone, but can't really... but I guess her good Catholicism kind of kicks in and stops her from doing that. And I guess that's just too frustrating for her. So that's why that final nail in the coffin just pushed her over, and she just had to get rid of Tony in that final episode.
It's also like a desire for her, right? Like it's something that she's like kind of she thinks about a lot. She's kind of like trying to repress. It's very much a big thing for her to try and like not just stay loyal or stay like be like a good Catholic. Whereas Tony just sees a woman who looks nice to him, and then they have sex. It's just like how meaningless it is, and the completely different approach. And I guess finding out that you've been in love with someone and now they've gone away forever, and you've like tried your absolute hardest to kind of not let it affect you, and then I guess finding out that Tony's done this thing which is like for him kind of means nothing, you know. And Carmela could have been with Furia and it wouldn't have mattered, you know. I guess it's...
But it would have mattered to him.
Yeah,
for sure, which is kind of...
I guess it's that hypocrisy, and just that one thing that takes her over that line. And I think that episode's got the best acting between the both of them in kind of any episode, really, of the show.
Yeah,
I think it's such a... both kind of argument scenes, because there's kind of two big ones, really.
So there's in the finale, you're right, there are. There's one which is just very explosive, and her just saying pretty much, right, this is over, sort of thing. And there's another one where I think they've not exactly calmed down a little bit, but I think they've kind of got their thinking and their headset on rationally, and they have like a proper conversation about why it is that this is actually happening, especially from her side.
And Carmela apologises for being really poorly written in the pilot.
Oh my god, yeah, that's a really funny moment. He just mentions, oh, at least I'm not going to hell when I die or whatever.
I guess the thing about it that really impressed me is when you look at a show like Breaking Bad, where Skyler is so obviously in the right, everyone, myself included, like has like a dislike for Skyler because I think the way the narrative is framed, and I could see like a worse show this moment, all the audience go, oh, Carmela's such a bitch, what did Tony do, you know, like, oh, I hate Carmela, but it does such a good job of, even if you're like a fucking like arsehole because Tony can do no wrong, he's done nothing wrong, you'd still be on Carmela's side just because of how well it set it up. So you totally believe all of the acting, and it's so well done. And having seen like these shows where like the wife character is just completely underdeveloped and it's just there to kind of support the male character, to have kind of Carmela just kind of draw like there's a line that's been crossed that is too much for her, and she kind of gives it back to Tony. And also the fact that I think they make a deliberate effort to have Tony try and be a better person in the last few episodes, and because he's actually been quite alright for like the last few episodes after killing Ralph, which is a horrible thing. You're like, well, Tony doesn't deserve this. But you're like, he definitely does. And I think it's really good. And I think you're kind of being attacked as well a little bit. But like, I don't know, maybe I'm just the only one that's starting to like Tony a little bit more. But I was like, Tony had been like an okay guy, I feel like, for the last few episodes building up to the finale. And the finale starts with them like they're gonna buy a beach house. Everything's really happy. And it plays it straight for like 34 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
I think
before it throws the water over.
Not only is it like culminating in the relationship, which I think has been very well developed over the season, it's even in that episode. I think it culminates very well, and it's the longest one by quite a large margin. I think it uses its. Is
that the case for the rest of the show as well?
I don't think they ever have an episode that's over an hour. I think this is the only one.
So I would say that. You mentioned a second ago that it has the best acting from both of them in the show. And I would say that Carmela in that episode, there's not a doubt in my mind. But Tony, I feel like there's actually a moment early on in the season, and maybe it's because of how great Meadow is in that scene as well. But I think it really shocked me, and it was the moment that I remember the most from that episode, just because of how it was acted, and it was a lot from him. And what it was it's annoying. I can't exactly remember the setup, but it was episode 2, episode 3 maybe, and I think it was to do with Meadow wanting to go off. I can't remember where, Barcelona or something like that maybe. And they say she can't leave the house, and the mafia gets brought up somehow. She says something, Meadow. And then Tony stands up and walks up in front of her, and he kind of looms over Meadow, and Meadow kind of like sort of recedes a little bit. But that very, very particular moment, for me, is one of the most frightening I've seen in the show so far, because it's one thing to see Tony looming over some guy who he wants to intimidate for money purposes or whatever, something like that. That doesn't really impact you. When you see him do it to his own daughter as a means to getting her to change her mind on something, and she's just there with this really frightened expression on her face, it's a really, really great piece of acting from the both of them. And I actually think Tony in that scene, to pull off that look of just complete and total intimidation and fear into someone, is excellent. And I don't know I think I might have actually mentioned the moment to you when I watched the episode a couple of weeks ago now. But it really was one of the best moments in the show, that scene in particular. The acting from him and Meadow was just on point, while Calm was just sat in the background somewhere, but she was also good too. So yeah, I think he's actually better in that episode with that one single moment. And Calm really steals the finale for me more than Tony does.
Yeah, definitely. I think so too. I think we haven't really talked about Ralph's death too much, but I think that's pretty well sold too. They have to, in like 2 episodes, 3 episodes, completely invest you in Tony's relationship and love with this horse, and then I guess that episode's tragic. I guess in the accident that starts it, which kind of, I don't know if it's from the headlines, but someone kind of being he's not killed, but he kind of gets hit by an arrow.
Yeah, he gets shot by an arrow, and it causes him to become well, we don't actually know because we've not seen him wake up yet, but
No.
But he's definitely going to be.
Seems like Ralph's like, he goes to the priest, he seems like he wants to change, and then the horse dies in an electrical fire, which I'm pretty sure Ralph doesn't cause. Like, I mean, the show doesn't show Ralph like doing it or show it happening like an accident, right? You don't see the fire. But I feel like from what do you think? I think Ralph hasn't done that.
I think he did.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think from his reaction, he's genuinely annoyed that Tony's trying to put it on him. I think that's what comes through in that performance to me. I don't think he did do that. I think Tony's grasping at straws. I think he's just angry and wants to take it out.
I think it was because it was so coincidental that it was happening at a time when Ralph was going through something very, very difficult and having to cope with that made me think that Ralph was definitely responsible. I mean, why else would it happen? And it's Ralph's own horse, and the horse died, and Ralph's going through a really, really hard time. There has to be some causality between those two things. That's why I thought Ralph was involved somehow. He doesn't deserve to die, of course. I'm completely on that. Well, I mean, he kind of does if you think about the episode from Series 3.
If we factor in that, I guess it's the manner of death that's so brutal, and you realize how few people you see Tony kill, let alone kind of with his bare hands, which is just that one guy in college. And just how the rest of the episode is just very quiet, and it's just dealing with it. Like, we've just killed a guy. Christopher comes over. It's slightly comedic when they pull off the hair, reveal it's a wig the whole time. Just.
But it's pretty much dialogueless, isn't it? They only ever talk about stuff when it's talking about what they're going to do. Oh, we're going to drive here, and we're going to plant this.
It's just the mechanics of it. It's kind of and just have it spending the night in Bada Bing and stuff, and just kind of, I guess it kind of gives it the somber atmosphere. And then the next couple of episodes like dealing with it, and just kind of having to go, oh, he's in the witness protection program, It's that one excuse that they have, or New York to do that.
Yeah, it's good.
I think it's.
So you were sure that he was going to die in that episode when, as soon as they put him on the path to redemption, you kind of felt it, isn't that?
Well,
what you said,
from the IMDb average ratings, I'm like, oh, someone's going to die here. Just how the Sopranos work. The picture was of Ralph. I'm like, all right, see you, Ralph. And then when the episode starts with him, his like redemption, I'm like, okay, I think he's going to die here.
Yeah, that's really sad because I didn't see that coming at all. Basically, right, from Series 3, the first time you see him, he's going to die, because that's just how these kinds of TV
the Sopranos
shows work. Yeah. But I've always thought with Series 4 starting, it was going to come down to the Ginny Sacks comment, which I guess is the really cool, unpredictable thing about his death. It comes from something very unexpected that you don't see coming. What you expect is for Johnny Sacks to retaliate at some point in the show. Doesn't happen. And instead it's over a horse, which is... I like that. It's extremely unpredictable, but it also works really well, given the context.
Mm-hmm. What else is there?
What, in Series 4?
Suicide episode.
Artie Bucco. Yeah, it's like half of it's great, half of it is just Artie. Just being, Artie. Right, okay, so that episode is the whole we got an issue of the week type thing.
Yeah.
Except in earlier episodes of the show, Series 1, it for me it always felt way too tangential, like they were trying to make some kind of stance that it felt very forced, I guess. But with this, it feels quite natural, and I also, like I said earlier on in this episode, I love that things happen in previous seasons, characters die or characters get affected by certain things, and the show doesn't just forget about them. Like, Gloria was always someone who seemed extremely depressive and unstable, and it felt like the kind of person who probably would self-harm if she was far down the rabbit hole enough. And I'm glad that they bring her back, because not only was she one of the best things about Series 3, but I like that Tony gets reminded how much of a shit guy he is, right? I feel like sometimes that doesn't even happen enough. Like, he does so many terrible things throughout the show. He treats people really, really badly. And sometimes he has really good shining moments, for sure. But in this case, he definitely was just really, really inconsiderate and just a difficult person to root for when in this particular situation. So the fact that that character comes back as someone who's committed suicide, I think is really, really effective, because it forces Tony to confront how he interacted with her in Series 3, and it turns out to be a really, really good episode from that half. The other half is the Artie Bucco subplot, which is not quite as well developed or explored, which is about some scheme that he invests money in, and he gets the money from Tony, and the scheme goes haywire. Arthur doesn't get his money back, then Arthur takes a bunch of pills, ends up in the hospital, and Tony goes to see him.
It's just that confrontation scene is just so weirdly done.
Yeah, it is weird, because it's all... I mean, he is just... His mood swings, his mood changes are ridiculous and just so sudden. He goes from being just this very kind of repenting, upset, completely just emotionally wrecked character. And then the second Tony says it's okay, I'll let you off, he goes, actually, I thought you were behind this all along. And then Tony has to go at him. He starts crying again. It's just this character has no focus. He has no stability. He's just all over the place. I guess that's kind of the point of the character. But at the same time...
It's just they use him in such shit ways. It's kind of like... he needs to have a plot. And the episode's going to say... He's just like... He like looks at Adriana once. He just breaks up with his wife like, in that episode. And Adriana's like, no. And that's the entire plot. There's one fucking episode. Everything is so rushed with Artie. Artie's like, I'm going to kill someone. And he's going to do it. And he doesn't. He's like, oh, I'm glad I didn't kill that guy. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Artie was addicted to heroin and got over it in the same episode. That he's like, oh no, I shouldn't do heroin. Does it, becomes a junkie, goes to rehab, gets out, and then by the end he's serving fucking tables at Vesuvio.
So, right, you know the episode where you sent me that still image of him saying, it's not just that man, I hate all men.
Yeah.
Is that for a moment I haven't seen yet?
I think probably.
Good, because I would have remembered that.
He's just like... He is like if Henry Plainview had like Daniel's, like whatever's inside Daniel that he like drives him, but he was just a massive failure. So he just hates people, but has to serve them all day. Artie Bucco.
You said that he seems like a very good idea for a character on paper, this kind of wannabe mobster who can't really get into the life because he kind of has ties elsewhere.
Yeah, I think he's a good actor as well. I think it's just I don't know what goes wrong with Artie. I think he's just really poorly written or something.
Yeah, he's well acted. It's a good concept. It's just his subplots are really piss poor, aren't they?
Mm.
Imagine that one in series where he's got the rifle aimed at Tony.
The thing is, like, I know so many that are gonna come that are worse, that are also bad. Like, really bad ones come out. Like that one episode where there's a rival restaurant that everyone eats at for like one episode and they never go there again. It's like all of the mobsters are in one restaurant. In terms of weird...
Hang on. Do you remember your Series 1 DVD where the college image was just Artie holding a rifle at the camera?
He's gonna kill Meadow. It's gonna happen. The one subplot I like that you probably don't is I like all of Paulie's shenanigans with his mum in the nursing home. Just the contrast between like Tony's relationship with his mother to like Paulie's, like how different they are, and like how nice Paulie's mum is. Like, she's just getting bullied, and Paulie's trying to do everything in his power to like make sure she's not being bullied. It's so stupid. But
I suppose so.
I don't know. Makes...
Well, why do you think out of all of Tony's men, Christopher and Paulie get so much kind of backstory and depth, and they really want to spend time showing you these characters' lives? But Silvio, he just exists in the context of this is a criminal organisation. Let's have him be the consigliere type.
I don't know if Stevie Van Zandt's a bad actor. I don't know. I guess the writers probably just enjoy writing for Paulie and Christopher more because they have more like interesting, defining character traits.
That's a fault of the writers, though.
Well, yeah, I think it's more that season 1 they see what they can do and they're like, oh, it's really funny when. I think Tony Sirico, Sirico, I think he is just a funny guy. From the stories they tell, when he saw someone, he made people like if he saw someone with like armpit hair, he had like a go at them for it. He was like a really weird cleanliness freak. He was like, your armpits look like 2 cunts. I think he was just like that, and I guess they probably wanted to play up to how funny he is, because he is like naturally very funny, and I think the same with the guy who plays Christopher. I know he used to write a lot of episodes too, so he was obviously like a favourite.
But he's not got a very good track record with us for writing episodes. I think often he's written the episodes that we end up disliking the most.
Well, he wrote the Christopher Columbus episode. I like the episode he wrote, which is the episode where Christopher's in the coma, and then Paulie like has like a spiritual like reckoning. I think that's a good one.
I think the last episode of Series 1 that I still thought was great was episode 8, and I think it was after then that things started to go downhill. And that was a Christopher written episode, because it was just about Christopher, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure. Because it starts off with a dream sequence of the guy that he shot in the pilot.
Yeah, I don't think he wrote that, but I think that's the first episode that he kind of stars in majorly. Because I know he said when he got that episode, he realised, okay, I'm one of the main characters of this show. Yeah, I don't like Sil that much, just because I don't see him really. Like he's just kind of in the background. Most scenes of him when it's at the Bada Bing and he's sitting next to Sil. That's the most of the time. The only time I can remember where you see Silvio's family life is one episode in season 6. Just half an episode in season 6. You get into his interior life. Whereas Paulie, I fucking know everything about Paulie's life. You know, I know his relationship with his mother's relationship with her friends. You know, and same with Christopher, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like we got a bit of Silvio in Series 1. We've seen his wife a few times.
Yeah, you see her. I don't think you ever really see her, like... It's not like she gets a plotline of her own.
No, she's just always at the dinner table, isn't she, when they go out.
I mean, we got more Furio in this season with him trying to make that house. That bit where he almost kills Tony.
Oh my god, yeah. We never talked about that, did we? Yeah,
No.
I forgot to mention that to you. That was a great moment. Because the other guys are looking away, aren't they? So that was his chance. He didn't go through with it, so he went back to Napoli.
There's like one scene they filmed in Italy, which I'm very impressed by. They went to Italy to film fucking one scene. Unless that wasn't in Italy, but it's got to be.
No, it has to be. I mean, it looks so fucking Italian. You're talking about when he goes to his dad's funeral.
Yeah.
And he's talking about Carmela to his uncle or something like that.
Yeah, it's just that one scene.
Yeah, it's a good scene as well.
This is like, in terms of like talking about things that break Carmela, just like him coming back and like having the gifts for everyone and stuff. Just the kind of little moments like that. I think that's the season. It's a lot of little like moments in like normal Sopranos episodes that kind of build in the background for the season finale. Almost there, kind of you don't notice it happening. Which I like quite a lot. And the fact that like she finds the fingernail of like it's not even the woman that she thinks it is, you know. It's like it's actually even worse than Carmela thinks it is, really. It's just that bad.
That's something that I can't believe. The amount of really, really attractive young women Tony sleeps with, and Tony is just Tony. They just all fall for him. I mean, at this point in the show, he's probably slept with about 5 characters, right?
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Don't know.
I mean, I can believe Dominic West because I think he is semi-handsome looking.
That's
but
James
Tony's
Gandolfini, isn't
Yeah.
it, really? Yeah, I mean that is kind of. I guess he's like charismatic and like rich. I mean, and I guess most of the people who meet him know who he is, and I guess there's like a certain appeal in like knowing that's Tony Soprano. But yeah, I think it would have made more sense if he was like slightly more attractive. I also like that he's just like a big guy. That's just like how he intimidates. He's just a large man.
Imagine if I get the end of the surprise, my one takeaway about his character, like none of the actual emotional depth. He's just a large man. That's all I got from
He's
him.
a big guy. I also like that there's just a side of Ralph that you never see before. That he's like, he doesn't like have sex with a woman really. He's got like this weird psychosexual like sadomasochist streak stemming from like childhood trauma that just gets dropped on you like randomly. Like just so randomly out of nowhere. That's just this completely different facet of a character that you had no idea about. I guess it makes you slightly more sympathetic to him. I don't know.
I think it does.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. I guess you wouldn't anticipate it with Ralph.
No, you wouldn't.
It kind of slightly doesn't make sense for things that happen in season 3. It's obviously a season 4 edition. But yeah, it's good. Ralph Cifaretto.
I don't
Bad
know
guy.
what to say about Series 4 though. I feel like Series 3 I could just talk about every episode if you told me the synopsis because they were always really good. There just wasn't a bad episode.
Yeah, maybe season 3 is better. I don't know. I still think season 4 finale though might be the best single episode of the show.
I guess Johnny Sachs becomes so much more prominent in this, and he is a good character. I know you like him a lot as well.
Yeah, I really like Johnny Sachs. We'll talk loads about Johnny Sachs as the show goes on. One of my favorite episodes of the show I've never told you about actually is a Johnny Sachs episode. It's the only
Later on.
the only time the show ever does a wedding episode. And obviously being like a mob thing, doing the wedding episode is going to be big, and they fucking knock it out of the park.
Really?
So many characters, such a big set, so many extras, and it just feels great. And obviously going from table to table talking about it yeah, it's brilliant. And it's Johnny's daughter getting married and that. So he's kind of that's a really good episode. But that's in season 6 even, which is 2 parts. But the season 5 is first. So do you think we'll do
a bit of Tony Blondetto first.
Do you think we'll do season 5 and season 6A as one podcast and then season 6B as a separate podcast, or just do it all together?
I think we could do it all together.
Oh, God.
Well, if you'd rather not, we don't have to.
Well, it's more that I feel like season 5 and 6, doing season 5 and 6A will be as long as this, but I think just talking about season 6B, it might even be the longest one we do, just because I know how much we're going to talk about the ending of the show, and we'll probably conclude about the entire show.
Maybe that's a good point. I feel like maybe the smartest thing to do is to just leave like yearly gaps between doing an episode of The Sopranos on there.
What's the season 5? I mean, maybe I'm getting to the point where I just, in like criticizing it, I'm making myself like it less. But it's got some weak ass shit. But it's also got like one of the best plot lines in the entire show. So I'm torn. It's got like some of the best moments. If I think about some of the greatest Sopranos moments and episodes, they're in season 5. Also, I just don't like Tony Blondetto that much.
Is Steve Buscemi really the weakest
He's
thing about
not
it?
bad. Like, Steve Buscemi's obviously a good actor. It just feels like, I don't know, it feels kind of forced. Like, I guess that's the problem. And I get that all narratives are forced. They don't occur naturally. But it's like, I don't know. It really feels like, oh, this is a new season of The Sopranos you're watching. New lighting, new characters. The family dynamic's not really there anymore. It just looks kind of dull. Getting a bit repetitive now. And season 6 is really lively. It's completely the opposite. I don't know. I guess.
How do you want to do The Wire? Are we going to do that in seasonal chunks?
Finish The Wire and then we'll figure it. I think we should probably just do season by season of The Wire. I feel like.
That'd be quite a good way to go.
Because I feel like The Wire is different. Sopranos, you can have a more free-form discussion about the characters and shit, but I feel like The Wire is I don't know. I feel like the Wire seasons are so self-contained in their storylines. You couldn't really go, this bit in season 1 informs this bit in season 2, and too much.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe season 2 has like a the entire. We're talking about The Wire. Season 2's whole string of stuff is completely irrelevant to the plot of season 2, but by season 3, it's like that was all really important. Like everything that happened there is like, what's the ramifications of that shit is happening now? You know, all the stuff that's out there pays off in season 3. So I guess we could do those two together, but I feel like they deserve their own season.
Well, I think that we could do it season by season, or we could do series 1, and then do 2, 3, then do 4, 5 maybe.
It's weird though, because I think series 1 would be the shortest ever. Be the one that would the least to say.
I guess
Maybe.
that's true. I'll have to finish the show as well. But series 1 is I loved series 1 a lot, and I as like a good start to a show, nothing beats that for me.
It's really excellent. I think I like 3 more just because there's moments in 3 that don't work as well, but there's just like the heights of season 3 are so good. Like some really like powerful shit in season 3. And season 2 is like the worst one, obviously.
But it's still really good.
It is really good. It just feels like a different show. Like when season 3 starts, it's like, okay, we're back on the Wire has started now. Like the Wire, like SVU, like the Wire Doc Plans or something. The spin-off show has ended, and now we're back on the real shit. Anyway, join us next week when we talk about The Wire, season 1.